So this is a battle that should have been reserved for 2025, but it's here in 2024, and we're talking about the Red Magic 10 Pro Plus versus the ROG Phone 9 Pro from Asus. So let's find out which is the best gaming phone for 2024. So with the launch of the Snapdragon 8 Elite chipset, we've seen a slew of devices come in that are really powerful and pack a lot of performance. One, of course, was the Asus ROG Phone 9 Pro, but today we're taking a look at the Red Magic 10 Pro Plus because this is one device that packs in a lot of punch. We gotta see who has the best gaming phone of the year. Now, first off, let's take a look at the device because Red Magic has done a really good job here. It comes in a couple of colors and flavors. And this I do have here is the silver one here. We can clearly see on the back of the phone, it's got a completely flat back, no protruding cameras, which is very unique. Now you can see 3 rings there on the back. 2 of them are for the cameras. We do have 250 megapixel sensors. One, of course, is a regular and the other is an ultra wide. And then we also have our built-in fan. This is something that is unique to Red Magic, which is very unique and nice because you've got a fan that helps cool the system directly while you're gaming at any form or fashion. Then you've got that X for number 10. You also have the Snapdragon 8 Elite chipset signature, but really nice design all around. Now on the sides of this device, we have air vents for the fan to actually push in air and pull out air to cool the device as much as possible. And of course, there's some ROG lighting in there you can see quite clearly. Now on the right hand side, this is where of course more of that Red Magic beauty comes into play. This is all aluminum build, really solid, nice rectangular shape. You've got your touch sensitive triggers left and right. They are color coded whenever you actually turn it on into the gaming section. It starts gaming. You also have your volume rocker power button, and then of course your red action button. This is your button that takes you into the Red Magic mode, or the gaming mode here, where you can activate, of course, your different gaming settings and functionalities all the way through, and even has some audio to it as well that basically sparks up and says Red Magic as you turn it on, which is pretty cool. Now in here, you've got this overlay that you find with a lot of gaming devices, and we'll get to that in a second. But let's talk about this device and the display. Now what we have here is a device with a 6.85-inch display compared to the Asus ROG Phone, which is a 6.78 display. Now, in terms of maximum nit brightness, the Red Magic has a 2000 maximum nit brightness, while the Asus ROG Phone has a 2500 nit brightness. So Asus has a slightly brighter display, and you can kind of see it with that. Now, as we go around with the hardware, we can see there are speaker grills at the bottom for both devices. There's a USB port at the bottom while at the top, there is a full speaker grill for the Red Magic, while the Asus has a slit under the screen. Now, both devices both have headphone jacks and they support high-res audio, but the Red Magic also supports Snapdragon sound. So, better wireless audio quality from the Red Magic device, especially if you're using your headphones for this to game. When it comes to thickness, the Red Magic is a little bit thicker, but when you add the camera bump behind the Asus, you find out that it's almost the same as well. Now, when we spin to the back of the Asus has, of course, that animatrix screen that allows you to, of course, see have different things animated behind, and also you can game on it if, say, you're on a flight and you don't have an internet connection. Some really fun, simple games there with the AniPlay feature, which is really nice. The other thing that the Asus has on the hardware that's different, that adds more, is that it's got a USB port on the left-hand side that allows you to do things. You can actually connect it there so it doesn't bother your hands while you're gaming, to charge the device or power through, or connect the external fan. That's another thing that's different here. Asus has some really good cooling, but nothing internal like the Red Magic. So we've seen that and we're going, okay, hardware-wise, they've gone with 2 very distinct different features and looks. Both hardwares look great. I do like the way they both look. And again, I do like the fact that the Red Magic does come in some different colored flavors. So let's take a look at some benchmarks. We do have the Snapdragon 8 Elite. Both devices either can go 16 to 24 gigabytes of RAM, which is quite impressive. Now, just to let you guys know, I did buy the Red Magic myself. I bought it for $999 with 16 gigabytes of RAM, and I got the Asus ROG 9 Pro from Asus with 24 gigs of RAM. So there's more RAM here, and that might play into some of the benchmarks. We'll have to take a look and see. So let's start off with our very first benchmark, which is Geekbench. So taking a look at Geekbench 6 and looking at the CPU scores, quite interesting here. The Asus ROG Phone goes over 10,000 on its multi-core, as opposed to Red Magic being at 9,916. Now, I did try this a couple of times at different times and days, and you can clearly see the Red Magic just didn't pass that score. And also the Asus passed it on single core at 3,201 compared to about 3,154. Now, when we go to our GPU scores here, it's a bit different. The Asus got 19,069 compared to 19,864. So slightly better on the Red Magic. Now, the one thing the Red Magic does is that you can overclock it. Same thing you can do with the Asus. You've got different modes where you can have higher performance. So on the Asus, you have things like ultra durable, dynamic, and X mode. X mode where you can go to the highest peak performance, while on the Red Magic you have, of course, Rise, and then you can go into Diablo mode. Now, I did Diablo mode for the benchmarks to ensure I had the highest level benchmarks as possible. So we're going to go over to 3D Mark to see the benchmark scores here. Now, the one thing you can have is you can have the fan run in any application you want to actually have things cool down, which is interesting and nice to see. So looking at benchmark scores here, let's go ahead and take a look at our Solar Bay scores. So Solar Bay for the Asus, you can see 10,039, not bad, but the Red Magic is at 11,615, really impressive. When we go to Wildlife Extreme, we see the Red Magic at 6,684, while the Asus is at 5,980. Quite impressive scores here all around. So I think a lot of people like this. This is quite impressive. But what about Antutu? Because we've heard that these devices have gone up to 3,000. I can tell you first off the bat that I have not been able to achieve 3,000 on any of these devices, but we're going to take a look at the scores and see what we have right here. So looking at both of them, what's quite impressive here is that the Asus is at 2.8 million compared to 2.6 million on the Red Magic. Now, maybe that RAM that we mentioned comes into play, but forget that. Let's look at raw gaming numbers. What do we get when we actually put games to the test? So the first game we tested, and before we even go to the testing, every game is set at maximum settings. So the highest settings for the highest frame rate. So starting off with Call of Duty Mobile, which is a very simple game, tested both of them at its highest settings for 120 frames per second. We're able to get that on both devices, and it played really well, steady frame rates across the board. Now, when we move over to PUBG, at smooth, extreme, highest max settings for both, we're also getting 120 frames per second. Now, a cool thing about both devices is that you do have this touch sensitive triggers, and you can remap the buttons. As you can see my gameplay for both the Red Magic as well as the Asus, I'm using the top triggers to actually play for both the games, which is quite impressive and also really nice. Now, moving over to Genshin Impact. Genshin Impact used to be that game that tortured all of us, right? And now it's like light further completely. So the Red Magic at 60 frames per second will play Genshin Impact 60 frames for more than 30 minutes, no breaks whatsoever. It is a smooth, clean gaming experience. Same thing with the Asus ROG Phone 9 Pro. It does that 60 frames per second, 30 minutes or more. Great. Now, when it comes to temperatures, before I get to Call of Duty Warzone, this is where it's quite interesting. So you'd expect that the Red Magic should have cooler temperatures overall because it has the built-in fan. The Red Magic with the highest stress levels that I got went to 109 degrees max for temperatures, which is something that I got to see on the device, while the Asus did 105 to 109. So sometimes it was 105, sometimes it was 109, and that's without the external fan. Now, when I use the additional fan, it completely dropped down to about 100 degrees and 99 degrees, sometimes 98, which is quite impressive. So that external fan actually, because it's a bigger fan, it also has a cooling plate, does wonders, which to me seems like Asus has better cooling without having an internal fan than what Red Magic has to play. So let's go over to Warzone. So if you've seen Snapdragon 8 Elite has some issues with Warzone, which I think it definitely needs an update for, especially with these two gaming devices. I've seen it run really well on MediaTek processors, but I wanted to compare these two together because we're comparing both the Red Magic and the ROG Phone. Now, we know with the ROG Phone 9, the best we've done is about 48 frames per second. Again, the game looked like it didn't really load well. It took for a long time to load, so some updates have to happen. Now, on the Red Magic 9 Pro, it did take some time to load, and playing at max settings, I was able to get roughly about 77 frames per second, which is pretty good, very good. So much better performance here for Call of Duty Warzone on the Red Magic 9 Pro, which means it does have a really fluid gaming experience. Now, some of you, of course, will also ask about emulators, and I went ahead and played some God of War Chains of Olympus, and it played beautifully on both devices at 4K upscaling on the Red Magic and on the Asus using the controller, able to play quite effectively, no issues there. Your emulations will work well. And I've said this and I'm going to say it again, Android games are not enough for the chips we have for smartphones. We need console level games on every single Android smartphone moving into 2025. That is just my take, and that's something that I need to see. Now, before we kind of wrap up this video, I want to talk about the cameras because most people who are buying these gaming phones still want a very good and decent camera. As I mentioned, with the Red Magic, we do have two 50 megapixel sensors and a macro lens, while with the Asus, we do have a 50 megapixel main, a 32 telephoto, and definitely also an ultra wide at 13 megapixels. Now, what's the image quality look like? Looking at the images side by side, honestly, I think Asus does a much better job. This is just a lot of pictures of me indoors with my son, and I wanted to see how it worked in just the worst conditions, because yes, it's indoors, yes, it's well lit, but also it's still technically not as late as daylight, which you would normally expect. And you can see my skin tone here is much better on the Asus. When you zoom into that picture, there's less softness that you find on the Red Magic, and I think Red Magic has a long way to go. So Asus clearly wins on that aspect. Now, the other thing, of course, are the speakers. So let's go ahead and take a listen. Now, honestly, I think both of them sounded really good. I did like the bass heavy nature of the Asus that was bassy but also clean. I felt like the Red Magic was much louder because it has two technically bottom firing speakers, but my preference here was leaning more to Asus because it had more feel to the music as well. But you definitely can hear it through the gameplay as well, that both of them sounded really good with gaming, so you get that full idea there. Okay, so rounding up this battle vid, who won this battle vid? Well, the answer is no one. Honestly, both devices are clearly matched together in terms of gaming performance. Now, some games like Call of Duty Warzone are not optimized, so which is why we can see a slight edge with the Red Magic over the Asus, but I think that would balance that out. In terms of general performance, both are great. Temperatures are also relatively close, but I think the Asus has the edge because it has a better camera as well on there, and it does have that external cooling. Now, Red Magic does have a bigger battery. I know you guys were about to mention that here and say Thunder E. No, because it just has a 7,050 milliamp battery compared to just a 5,800 milliamp battery, which is still pretty big, but Red Magic has a beefier battery there. So which means you can play for longer periods of time, and charging that is with a 120 watt fast charger. Asus is 65 watts and also has wireless charging as well, which is nice perks. But as gamers, that fast charging might be something you want to really get used to. So let me know your thoughts. I'm picking the ROG Phone 9 Pro because I think it just is an overall better device, including gaming. But I think the Red Magic 9 Pro is solid. Now the prices are very similar, especially if you're going for the Pro Plus. So let me know what you think. If you have any questions or any comments, leave them down below. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and Always enjoy your entertainment.